the topic of abductions has only really been public for 30 years.
Yeah,
since Bud Hopkins came along, really. That was, I think, in the 80s. So I don't know that they have or not, but they have certain things that they look for in people when they abduct them. And I'm told by someone that should know that if you're abducted by the military, you've already been abducted by aliens first. And then the military wants to know why they took you, so they come and take you also.
That's what I hear all the time. And by the way, abductions became more popular or prevalent, the stories, if you will, in the 80s. But we had the stories of, Beatty Barty Hill from the 60s, right, and much others. But exactly what you said. I remember a conversation with Melinda Leslie, who told me the same thing, that people get abducted, and then, of course, the government can come and say, "Oh, Mr. Tyler, we'd like you to come down to the base so we can interview you, and you can tell us what happened," because they would be admitting that they know that this is happening. But if they do it in a covert way and pretend to be an abduction, then they can get all the information. Same with, what do you call it, the cattle mutilation. I've been told that a lot of times it's actually the government doing that to take a look at the certain parts of the tissue of the cattle to see how much radiation they have, for example. Have you heard that too?
The reason they're doing it, as far as I understand it, is because the gray aliens require human blood. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. The little grays, the classic ETs, the ones that are most usually associated with abductions, they are they're artificially engineered organisms. They're not a naturally occurring race.
Biorobots?
Yes, they're sort of biorobots is a good way to put it, I guess. And they are used to do the dirty work for another race, basically, and they are not very good pilots, they're responsible for most of the crashes that we find. And they're like a cyborg. Okay, that's the word I was trying to think of. They're like a cyborg, but they do not have a digestive system like we do. They don't have a trachea. They don't have a esophagus, a stomach, anything like that. But they do require nutrients. So the way that they feed themselves is they soak the nutrients in through their pores in their skin. And that is also how it's excreted. A lot of people that go on board a gray spaceship and have memories of it will say that it stinks horribly inside there. It's because they basically smear a compound that's made of human blood and some other organic secretions, let's say enzymes, whatever that we secrete from our organs that they need. They mix it all together and they smear it on their skin. Sometimes they've been reported that they even bathe in it. And then it's absorbed through their pores and excreted later through their pores. And that's why it smells so terrible in their ships, because they're basically taking all this, it's coming out through their skin. So the cattle mutilations, the basic reason for the cattle mutilations is because they can use cattle blood instead of human blood if they have to. And that was much easier at the time for them to get. And the government was assisting them in this. This government was helping supply them with, as I'm sure you remember, the cattle were found with not a drop of blood remaining inside of them.
Sure.
The blood was all drained out, and their organs, many of their organs were cored out. And that's why, because they were used for nutrition for these aliens.
In exchange for what?
Technology. We've been sold for technology. Our military has technology that you wouldn't even believe. They're thousands of years ahead of us. They're not 40 years ahead of us like some people think. In some cases, they are thousands of years ahead of us.
Do you really think, that, Derek, that they are actually engaging in a contractual agreement with the lesser advanced civilization? It's like if we had to, do I go and engage in a contractual agreement with cattle, for example?
Well, that's what happened, because it made it easier for them. It made it easier for both sides, really. What the agreement is, as I was told by the colonel, the agreement basically says that they've agreed not to interfere in our politics. They've agreed to provide us with occasional advances in technology, and we have agreed on our part to not disclose their presence, to not shoot at their craft to let them basically overfly our country anytime they want to, and to abduct a certain amount of our citizens freely without repercussions. The Greys have broken those treaties. Both, as I understand it, both sides were intending to break them even as they were signed. The Greys have abducted hundreds of times more people than they were agreed to by the treaty, and we intended to use the technology they gave us to try to build a weapon to beat them with. So it was just one of those. It was an agreement that it worked out for both sides, really. We also agreed to construct at our expense a network of underground bases for them to operate and reside in. The aliens already had some underground bases here, but we have constructed a lot more of them at our expense. And they have given us technologies along the way, which, a lot of them have never been released. Almost none of them have been released to the public, really. But some of them include, they've given us, I'm told, the cure to virtually every disease that we're aware of, including cancer. And they've given us military technologies. They gave us lasers. They've given us time travel technology, which was the most difficult thing for me to come to grips with. If I hadn't seen it myself, I might not have believed that.
Let's stay there. Tell me what you know about time travel technology. And is it alien or is it human?
Well, I don't know where it came from. I know that the aliens and the humans both have this ability. I've heard that our time travel technology came from something that was developed by Tesla. I don't know if that's true or if this was a technology that was exchanged with us. I don't have any way of knowing, but I can tell you that the aliens and our Black Ops military both have this ability. They can go forward or backward in time, either one. And the military doesn't seem to be a problem to them. They seem to do this as easily as we put a TV dinner in a microwave oven. It's not a problem. They've used it on me at least 3 times that I know of. And every time they did it, it was for a reason that I would have never come up with on my own to use time travel for. You know, we think of it as something like a one-shot deal when we think of time travel. You know, we're going to go back and see the dinosaurs or see Abe Lincoln, right? That's not how they see it at all. To them, it's something that we can do anytime we want to. And so...
almost like tourism.
Yes. And so, for instance, I only have one memory of actually being returned to my bedroom after an abduction by the Greys. But that particular time, I was returned a few seconds before I had ever been taken. And they hovered my body, these 2 Greys hovered my body over my bed. I could see my future self laying in bed. It was like a little bit out of time phase with me at the time. And they lowered me right down into my body on the bed in the same position. There was no feeling of contact. It's supposedly physically impossible for 2 objects to occupy the same space at the same time. But this is what happened. They lowered me right down into my body. A few seconds ticked by, and it was like we caught up with each other. And I woke up like I'd been dreaming. I looked around the room. There was nobody in the room. They were gone. But no time had passed on the clock because I'd made a note of, because before they come and get you, they put you to sleep, you know, and they can put you to sleep whenever they want to. And after a while, I got so that I could tell that that's what was happening. You'd just be going along normally, and all of a sudden you were so tired that you couldn't possibly stay awake for another 5 minutes, and you would be asleep within a minute or 2. And so I made a habit of checking the clock when that happened, and it was like they always showed up on a timer. It was like they always showed up at 1:58 a.m., just like they were on a timer. So they returned me back to my apartment that I was living in at the time. No time had passed on the clock. Anyone that was sleeping beside me, they would have been put to sleep too. As far as they were concerned, I would have never been taken at all and never gone anywhere because I was never missing. You see what I'm saying?
Well, how many hundreds, if not thousands of people talk about missing time? Then right. You would have to ascribe this to this situation. But when it comes to...
Well, there was no missing time. I mean, there was no time elapsed.
Well, that's what I mean.
When they brought me back, it was still 1:58 on the clock.
Right. Well, what I
had
really
memories
mean
of being on the ship for several hours.
That's what I really mean is that you feel like some people say they've been gone for a month and they come back and no time has passed.